Joe Biden seems to be tempering his unfettered, unequivocal support for Israel. There's a New York Times article that says he is saying, we support you, but they're words of caution. And this is coming as the Americans and people all over the world have watched this humanitarian crisis that has evolved in Gaza. And I think listening to some of those Israeli leaders over the weekend and on Friday using words like payback have forced Joe Biden to take what may be a different position. How long do you think it will be before Biden's position isn't just support with words of caution, but maybe conditions are placed on Israel as it relates to all of the aid and support that Biden is trying to provide?
We saw last week a turn in some of this, and you may recall some of the reporting noted that U.S. military officials and diplomatic officials were urging the Israelis to learn some of the lessons that the U.S. learned in Iraq. Right, and that to me was an early signal that perhaps they weren't exactly happy with what was being said and done coming out of the Israeli government. I would add to you also, I would also ask you to remember, and this is where electoral politics can sometimes get in the way. You may recall that in 2016 and in 2020, Benjamin Netanyahu had sort of cozied up to Donald Trump in those elections. He and Trump had a long relationship, and they were pretty close. And Obama and Netanyahu did not exactly have a close relationship. So I think those are among some of the reasons why you see some of this. And to your point, and I think it's absolutely right, some of the Israeli leaders are on the verge of sounding like cowboys here with some of the rhetoric that they're using. And it's provocative unnecessarily in some cases. And it also puts domestic pressure on an Israeli ally, namely the United States. As you know, many of the leaders, particularly on the Republican side, don't want to get involved anywhere when it pertains to U.S. servicemen and women. But if this continues, it's going to be hard to not get involved. And so I think what Biden is doing is just trying to wave a flag in front of them, saying, "Hey, look, we're with you, but it's not unconditional. If you go too far out of line, we're going to have to get it. We're going to have to pressure you to take a different path."
So, Allen, what is too far, right? That's the big question here, because Palestinians say already 8,000 people have been killed. 2,700 of those they report are children. And not only was there some provocative rhetoric being used Friday and over the weekend, they also, the reports that I saw, and I actually saw some of these speakers on television from Israel, wrapping themselves up in Joe Biden. Like, the U.S. is 100% with us. U.S. is 100% with us, knowing, presumably, that they needed to say that over and over and over again as they were getting pushback from the UN Secretary General, the Secretary General of the UN, and others around the world that are just becoming increasingly incensed by this killing. Even people in Israel saying, "Not in our name." So we've seen Jewish American groups protesting in New York and other places, and Jewish people inside of Israel saying, "Not in our name." So the question is, how much is too much?
So I think too much has already happened in a world of expanding problems and war not being solution, because we've seen this happen over and over again through historical analysis of how someone strikes and someone strikes back, and you sort of invent that story. But I think what's important to me to share with the American people is that there are Palestinians that are American that are also in Palestine, and therefore they're being bombed. And if we're going to talk about the protection of Israelis who are American, we also have to talk about the protection of Palestinians that are American. And the issue here is the conflict is the division, and the justification of collective punishment baffles me in all ways, because we would never say that in any other circumstance, that it's collective damage for these children to die, even if they were involved, right? If they were born into that situation, they had nothing to do with it. So I'm reminded in history that the narrator describes what's happening to me and gives the justification for the story, because in the rich place of Haiti, I'm sure the French people were saying, they are crazy, they're Mongols, we should kill them all, right? So we should have a wider perspective of that and know that if it really was about the challenge and the protection, then it really is just like with the U.S. after 9/11. What were the security failures that allowed this to happen? And what caused that animosity to sort of build? Killing more of them than killed of you is only going to regenerate the whole story and maybe aggravate the whole region. That's what you see what's happening right now is this aggregate foreign policy of trying to say, let's not try to divide us anymore. But we have found something, and I think this is a political secret that we need to just talk about. There is a division tactic going on right now across U.S. politics, American politics, and the world to divide people into thinking that's your enemy when they've always been your friend. And the best way to solve that is through this brutal conflict.
Yeah, we had a really, I thought, interesting guest on the show last week. She is a historian of Israeli-Palestinian crisis. She's written several books. She also studies the crisis from a religious standpoint. And I think she made Professor Fauntroy a really good point. And she said we have to think about Israel as a state. And, separating the people, the Jewish people, we should disagree when states act in a way that are barbaric or, they're too aggressive, as many people think Israel is being. And we can condemn the state of Israel, the government actions of Israel, while still mourning the losses of those 1,400 innocent people who were killed as a result of the terrorist attack. Supporting the Jewish people to live without fear and without, retribution, and do that while also having those same feelings towards the people in Palestine who are not, complicit in this, who are innocent victims. And there seems to have been now this conversation that's taking place that if you somehow try to explain the history that Allen just talked about, you are excusing the terrorists. And I saw another scholar recently say, no, an explanation is not an excuse. She wrote a really, I thought, learned, brilliant piece in The Atlantic, that we can explain that history because many people don't know it. And we're not excusing it by simply explaining it.